There are moments in life that you cannot name right away. They are not loud, not dramatic. They do not arrive with thunder or lightning. They come quietly, like a morning when you wake up and suddenly notice that the light in the room feels different today. Not because the sun has changed, but because you are standing in a different place. For Libra, this moment is arriving now, not as an empty promise, but as a deep movement that has been preparing itself for a very long time, beneath the unseen foundation of your life. You have lived through many seasons where you were asked to hold balance between opposing forces, between giving and receiving, between responsibility and dreams, between pleasing others and listening to your own voice. There were times you wondered why everything seemed to ask you to be patient just a little longer, to give in just one more step, to think one layer deeper than everyone else. But what you may not have realized is that those very years were shaping you into someone who can remain steady even when the world tilts. What is opening now is not a random reward. It is more like a door that only opens when you become quiet enough to hear its hinges move. Many people will not notice that anything is changing, but you will feel it, a feeling that is hard to describe, as if a familiar weight has suddenly become lighter, as if you no longer have to try so hard to be yourself. The questions that once haunted you no longer demand immediate answers, and in that silence, something very real begins to take root. This is not the moment when everything becomes perfect, but it is the moment when things begin to feel right, right for your rhythm, right for the values you have quietly protected for so many years. You may not yet see the full shape of the future, but you will notice that you are no longer afraid of it the way you once were. You begin to trust that what is coming into your life is not here to test you again, but to restore, not to take away, but to return what you have always deserved. Libra has always had the ability to see many sides of the same story. But during this time, you learn something essential. Not all balance requires you to stand in the middle. Sometimes, balance means knowing when to step toward yourself. And that decision, quiet as it may seem, has the power to change the entire direction of your life. You may begin to notice small signs, a conversation that feels accidental, but speaks directly to what you have been carrying inside, an opportunity that appears at the exact moment you are ready, an ending that no longer hurts the way it used to, but brings relief instead. These are not random strokes of luck. They are confirmations that you have crossed an invisible threshold, where life begins to respond to you with respect. And in that moment, you understand that you no longer need to run. You no longer need to prove your worth through constant sacrifice. You begin to walk forward with a quiet certainty, a confidence that does not need to be loud. As if you know, no matter how the road ahead may curve, you have learned how to keep your own heartbeat steady. Some changes do not arrive to shock you. They arrive to heal. They come to place you back where you truly belong. And when you stand there, you realize that everything that once made you doubt yourself, everything that caused hesitation, everything that forced you to wait, has quietly led you to this exact moment. A moment arrives when you no longer stand before life asking, "Why is it me?" Instead, there is a deep, unspoken knowing that it is finally time to live in alignment with your true values. And as that thought settles quietly in your heart, you begin to sense a different kind of movement spreading around you. Not urgency, not the pressure of racing against anyone else, but a steady, grounded flow, as if everything is slowly returning to where it has always belonged. You may not be able to name what is happening right away, but you will recognize the signs. They feel familiar, and yet strangely new. Your work begins to feel clearer, no longer clouded the way it once was. Choices that used to weigh heavily on you no longer feel so difficult. You begin to feel your place in the world, without pushing, without competing, without comparison. Simply being present starts to feel like enough. And in that calm presence, doors you once believed were never meant for you begin to open, quietly. Libra was born to seek harmony, but this season brings a different kind of balance. No longer the kind that asks you to shrink yourself to keep the peace, but the kind that allows the natural flow of life to guide you toward opportunities that truly fit. It may feel as though you are stepping onto a path that has already been prepared. Not because someone laid out a red carpet, but because you have grown enough to recognize where you belong. Money, work, stability do not arrive as sudden miracles. They come gradually, solid, real. Perhaps it is an offer you never expected. A project that was once delayed suddenly moving forward with ease. A resource appearing at the exact moment you need it. These moments do not overwhelm you. They reassure you, as if life itself has finally begun to breathe at the same rhythm as you. The old limits that once made you believe this was as far as you could go begin to dissolve gently. There is no breaking sound, no dramatic collapse. Just one day, you realize you have already gone farther than you ever thought possible. What once felt distant is no longer out of reach. It stands right in front of you, close enough to touch with a confidence that feels new and yet deeply familiar. And the most valuable part of all is not what you achieve, but how you experience yourself along the way. You no longer feel that peace must be sacrificed in order to succeed. No longer fear that gaining one thing means losing another. You begin to understand that true prosperity is not excess, but a sense of fullness that rises from within and gently moves outward. There will be days when your heart feels calm, even while the world continues to move. Moments when you realize you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. What is arriving now comes because it aligns with who you are today, not who you once tried to become. And in that recognition, you stand quietly, rooted, ready, as life continues to unfold in a way that finally feels like your own. And within that flow, you begin to trust your intuition more deeply. You start to believe that every step you take, no matter how small, is guiding you toward a life that feels more stable, more grounded, and more deserving of everything you have quietly planted over the years. That feeling is not loud. It does not seek attention. It moves like a soft light slipping gently inside you, illuminating corners you once overlooked. You realize you are seeing things differently now, more calmly, more deeply, and with greater compassion for yourself. Situations that once kept you hesitating for a long time suddenly become clear, not because you have more information, but because you have learned to listen to reason and emotion at the same time. Before, you often stood in the middle, trying to hold everything together, afraid that leaning too far in any direction would cause everything to lose balance. But now, balance is no longer a tense effort. It becomes a natural state, a place where you know when to analyze and when to trust the quiet feeling whispering inside your chest. You begin to see that contradictions are no longer dead ends. They become meeting points where possibilities intersect. Where others see only two opposing choices, you notice a third path, softer, smarter, less draining. This does not make you feel superior. It makes you feel useful, as if you were meant to bring clarity into moments of confusion. That clarity spreads slowly, but it is steady. It shows in the way you speak, the way you listen, even in the silences you allow to exist. Others may not immediately understand why they feel at ease around you, but they do feel it. A sense of being understood without being judged. A space where everything is seen fully, not cut short by assumptions or temporary emotions. You also begin to make decisions without tormenting yourself for too long, not because you have become cold, but because you have learned to trust the ripeness of timing. When it is time to move forward, you move. When it is time to pause, you pause, without self-blame. Each choice carries a quiet respect for yourself, and that respect creates a strength that is calm, yet enduring. You may notice that you are no longer pulled into meaningless arguments. You no longer feel the need to prove that you are right. You choose clarity over noise. You choose solutions over confrontation. And in that choice, you continue forward with a steadiness that speaks louder than any argument ever could. And that very choice begins to open new doors. Places where wisdom is no longer something to display, but a tool to build a life that feels harmonious, deep, and meaningful, not only for you, but for everyone walking at the same rhythm beside you. When that clarity becomes your inner foundation, another movement begins to form. Quiet, subtle, yet impossible to reverse. You may not be able to name it right away, but you can feel it clearly. The efforts you once planted with patience and silence are beginning to respond, like seeds meeting the right rain after a long season of waiting beneath the soil. There were years when no one saw your work, decisions you made before recognition arrived, choices that were right but never applauded. You questioned whether that endurance would ever lead anywhere. And now, the answer does not come through explanation, but through experience. Things begin to move faster, more smoothly, as if life itself has finally caught up with your growth. You notice it in the way your work responds to you. Projects that once stalled suddenly gain momentum. Conversations that seemed ordinary open new directions. An offer appears at the exact moment you are no longer impatient, yet fully ready. Money does not arrive with the feeling of chance. It arrives with stability, with relief. Not because the amount is overwhelming, but because it feels right. Enough, like a delayed but sincere acknowledgement. What stands out most is that you no longer view success as a destination that must be chased at all costs. You see it as a current you are stepping into with awareness. You understand now that true value is not measured by how much you accumulate, but by who you become along the way. And because of that, the opportunities coming to you carry a different quality. They do not demand that you sacrifice your peace. They do not ask you to give up what is essential. They align with who you are now, someone who knows their boundaries, someone who respects their time and their energy. You may notice that things which once took years to build are now moving forward with natural speed. Not because you are rushing, but because you are no longer off course. Each step has weight. Each decision has depth. And when the direction is clear, the path seems to open on its own. You do not need to move faster than anyone else. You only need to move in truth with yourself. Deep inside, you also sense a subtle shift in the way you view money. It is no longer a constant worry, no longer a measure of your worth. It becomes a resource, a tool to create stability, to care for what matters, and to expand your influence in a more human way. You feel calmer when you think about the future, not because everything is perfect, but because you trust your ability to handle what comes, and that calm grounds you quietly. You are no longer pulled into meaningless comparisons, no longer shaken by the success of others. Your path feels clearer than it ever has. No spotlight needed, no loud applause required. Just the knowing that each passing day brings you closer to a life that reflects the values you have quietly protected for so long. As this current continues to expand, you begin to see that fulfillment is not limited to material things. It moves into the way you work, the people you choose to build with, the way you use your time. Everything slowly finds order, not through control, but through guidance from a steady inner strength. And in that steadiness, you stand rooted, clear, and ready for what is still unfolding. And within that steadiness, you begin to feel that you are standing exactly where you belong, ready for deeper movements of life to unfold. A place where not only your results expand, but the meaning behind them begins to shine through. And right there, a very unusual feeling appears. Not excitement, not exhilaration, but a deep sense of grounding, as if a quiet inner space has just opened inside you, wide enough for things to come and go without colliding the way they once did. You start to notice that what used to exhaust you no longer reaches as deeply inside. Careless words, thoughtless actions, relationships that once required you to tense yourself just to keep the peace begin to step back on their own. No cutting off, no arguments, no long explanations, simply this truth. You are no longer on the same frequency. And as you step away from those vibrations, a very different space opens, a space where you can breathe in your own rhythm. This protection does not appear as a tall wall separating you from the world. It is far more subtle than that. It feels like a thin layer of light around you, enough for you to clearly sense your boundaries, enough so that what does not belong cannot move any deeper. You are still present. You still listen. You still care. But you are no longer pulled into the emotional chaos of others. You begin to understand that compassion does not require self-sacrifice, and balance does not mean endurance. In high-pressure situations, where you once felt easily shaken by expectations and responsibility, you now maintain a steady calm. Not because you do not care, but because you have learned where to place your focus. You think more slowly, more deeply. You respond with clarity instead of emotional reaction. And that creates a powerful difference, not only for you, but for everyone around you. There are days when you realize you no longer need to tell yourself that everything will be okay. You feel that it already is. Not perfect, but truly okay. You sleep more deeply. You listen to your body more carefully. You no longer force yourself to be strong in moments that ask for rest. This inner stability does not make you distant. It makes you grounded. And that grounding spreads naturally. Those near you begin to feel calmer too, without knowing exactly why. You become more selective about what you allow into your inner world, not from suspicion, but from respect. You respect your energy, your time, your emotions. Healthy relationships become clearer. Connections built on manipulation or depletion gradually lose their hold. No drama, no lingering wounds, just a gentle withdrawal of what no longer fits. And within that cleared space, you begin to hear your inner voice more clearly, a voice that is low, steady, unhurried. It reminds you that you do not need to prove your worth through endurance, that peace does not require losing yourself. True balance begins inside, and once it is established there, the outer world adjusts naturally. You may be surprised to realize that this calm is your greatest strength right now. It allows you to move through change without being swept away. It keeps you clear even when everything around you still feels uncertain. And from that clarity, you remain steady, present, and quietly prepared for whatever comes next. And within that clarity, you are not only protecting yourself, you are also creating a safe foundation for better things to keep finding their way to you. Naturally, gently, as if they have always known that you are here and ready to receive them. From that foundation, a very subtle movement begins to flow into your emotional life. Not loud, not rushed. It moves slowly, like a warm breeze slipping through a door that has only just been opened after a long time closed. You may not immediately realize that your heart has changed the way it responds. Before, you loved through endurance, through holding yourself together so nothing would fall apart. You believed love meant accepting a little imbalance, sacrificing a little, staying silent a little, just to keep the peace. But now, that feeling no longer fits. You no longer feel the need to tense yourself to maintain a connection. You begin to understand that real love does not make you smaller. It helps you stand more fully in who you are. New connections begin to appear in a very different way, not through immediate intensity, but through a sense of safety, a presence that allows you to be yourself without constant adjustment. Conversations become lighter, yet deeper. There are no longer awkward silences, only comfortable ones, where nothing needs to be said for understanding to exist. And if some old relationships are still present, you begin to see them differently, without blame, without regret, without the urge to hold on. You clearly recognize what has completed its purpose and what needs to be released so you can move forward. Letting go no longer feels like loss. It feels like setting down a suitcase you have carried for far too long. Your body feels lighter, your breath grows deeper, your steps become steadier. You learn something essential during this time. Opening your heart does not mean leaving every door wide open. It means knowing when to allow someone in and when to preserve your inner space to protect your balance. You are no longer afraid that setting boundaries will cost you love. Instead, you begin to see that only connections that respect those boundaries are truly meant to stay. You may be surprised to notice that you are no longer drawn to extreme emotions, no longer attracted to instability disguised as passion. You choose honesty over drama, consistency over emotional highs and lows. And that choice does not make your emotional life dull. It makes it warmer, more enduring. In ordinary moments, you feel this shift most clearly. A gaze held just long enough, a question asked with genuine care, a presence that does not disappear when things become difficult. These small moments quietly come together to form trust, something you once lacked, but could never quite name. Now it arrives naturally, as if it had simply been waiting for you to be ready to recognize it. And even when you are alone, loneliness no longer feels heavy. You no longer sense that something is missing. you recognize that you are in a very important relationship, the one you have with yourself. From that place, every other connection becomes healthier because it is no longer built on lack, but on sharing. There is a gentle warmth in the way you look toward your emotional future now. Not vague hope, but grounded trust. You trust that what arrives will arrive at the right time, with the right person, in the right way. And when it does, you will not lose yourself within it. You will step forward whole, carrying everything you have learned about balance, respect, and your true worth. In that space, love is no longer something you have to search for. It becomes something that grows naturally when everything is ready. And when the heart finally settles, something else begins to reveal itself with clarity. You realize that your presence now carries a different kind of weight, not heavy, not imposing, but grounded. People are drawn to you not because you speak louder, but because when they are near you, everything slows down just enough for them to hear themselves again. You notice this in conversations that seem ordinary at first. A friend lingers longer while talking to you. A colleague comes to you for insight, not for rehearsed advice, but for a perspective they have not yet been able to reach. You are not trying to lead anyone. You are simply listening fully. And it is that listening that creates the space for truth to step forward on its own. There are moments when you are surprised that your words land exactly where they need to. Not because you prepared the perfect answer, but because you are speaking from a place that is real, a place that has known conflict, that understands fragility, that has learned how to balance reason and emotion. When you speak, others feel fairness without judgment. When you are silent, that silence does not abandon them. It holds them. Gradually, you find yourself standing at very unique intersections, between opposing viewpoints, between different kinds of people, between tensions that most would rather avoid. You do not take sides, but you do not step away either. You are present, like a bridge. And that bridge is not built with grand speeches. It is built with consistency, with the way you live, with the respect you show to every person who passes through your life. Your influence does not come from authority. It comes from trust, not from control, but from the ability to connect what once seemed impossible to reconcile. You see the wider picture, and you help others see their place within it, without diminishing them, without letting them disappear. You do not lead by racing far ahead. You lead by walking alongside, keeping the rhythm steady, and lighting the turns when the path becomes unclear. You may realize that you are no longer afraid of the responsibility that comes with influence. Before, you avoided that role, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of disrupting balance, afraid of causing harm without meaning to. Now you understand that leadership does not mean having every answer. It means being still long enough for others to find their own. And you do this in a way that feels natural, human. Your presence begins to create quiet circles of impact, a decision made with fairness, a conflict softened through understanding, a group restoring harmony because the right perspective was placed at the right moment. You do not need recognition. What you feel instead is something deeper, quieter, the knowing that you have helped something become better, even if only slightly. In very still moments, you sense clearly that this is not a role you had to force yourself into. It was cultivated over time. Through every moment, you chose fairness over convenience, connection over division, understanding over winning. And now, standing where you belong, this role no longer feels heavy. It becomes a current, carrying you closer to the deeper meaning of being here at all. You begin to see that real influence does not need a stage. It needs consistency, an open heart, and a steady mind. And when those move together, you are not only guiding others through difficult moments, you are reminding them that balance always exists, even when the world outside feels unsteady. And within that quiet ripple, you keep moving forward, not loudly, not in a rush, carrying a deep inner trust that the harmony you are creating today is becoming the foundation for something even better, slowly taking shape ahead of you. And then there comes a very particular moment, not a climax, not an ending, more like pausing in the middle of a familiar road and suddenly realizing you are no longer the same person you were years ago. You feel it in the way you stand before life itself. You are no longer waiting for signals from the outside to give yourself permission to move forward. You no longer need someone else to confirm that now is the time. Inside you, there is a quiet agreement, clear, steady, as if every part of you has nodded at once. This is the moment when you stop doubting your intuition, when you stop delaying what you already know is right. This readiness does not look like impulse. It does not push you to make dramatic moves overnight. It simply places you gently in the position of someone who chooses. You choose to trust what you have lived through. You choose to step forward even without seeing the entire road. You choose to open your hands instead of closing them out of fear. And within that very human choice, a new current begins to move. You may not hear it, but you feel it. Things no longer feel blocked. Decisions come more smoothly. Opportunities arrive without needing to be chased. Relationships find their rhythm without excessive effort. Life begins to respond with cooperation instead of constant testing. The quiet miracle is this. You no longer see prosperity as something distant or extravagant. It becomes a natural state when you live in alignment with yourself. Stability no longer feels like stagnation. It becomes solid ground for building something that carries lasting meaning. Happiness is no longer a fleeting moment. It becomes a sense of fullness, woven into the smallest details of everyday life. You begin to honor your own rhythm, knowing when to move forward, knowing when to pause, understanding that not every door is meant to be forced open. Some doors open only when you are standing in the right place at the right time, and you are very close to that moment. A moment where everything aligns so naturally that questions fall away on their own. There is no ceremony marking this shift, only a deep agreement between you and life itself. A silent nod, a step taken with complete trust. And from there, the flow of prosperity, stability, and happiness begins to move as something obvious. No display, no proof required. You walk forward with the calm of someone who understands they do not need to become anyone else to be worthy. Everything you were searching for outside was quietly prepared within you a long time ago. And when you allow yourself to live at that rhythm, the world around you begins to adjust, to walk with you, very gently, very honestly, and for the long run,